Alright, so as you guys can see, we are back in familiar territory, Las Vegas, Nevada, for a couple of days. And I know I don't really go too deep into personal stuff on this channel, but you guys gotta check this out. This red Honda Civic is my car for when I'm in town, and I got a custom license plate for it. You guys are gonna wanna see this because I think it's badass. That's right, straddle right on the license plate. Perhaps an indication of tonight's sessions. I'm busy in the mornings over the next couple of days before I go back to LA, but at night I don't have much going on, so I figured why not bring you guys along to the strip. We're gonna be playing some 510, maybe 1020. I didn't bring a whole lot of money, so probably not gonna be any nosebleed games, but it's still gonna be a good time. I'm gonna stop talking now. Let's go to the casino. Alright, so here we are at the Wynn/Encore, probably one of the nicer properties on the strip. And after much research, it turns out they have the biggest games tonight. They have a few 510 tables and one game of 1020, which I'm not even sure is still running. So I'm just gonna hop into whatever we can get into and share the hands with you guys momentarily. I'm probably not gonna win this Bugatti though, because that's like $1 million, and I can't remember the last time I won $1 million playing 510. It's been a while. All right, guys, here we go with some hands. In the first one, I looked down at Ace King. Great start to the night. I raise it up to $50, playing 5, 10, 20. The button makes the call, and then the big blind re-raises to $330. He started the hand with around $1,000, so when it gets to me, I just go all in. The button gets out of the way. The big blind thinks for a while and does not. Instead, he puts in the rest of his chips, so we are going to go see a run out with a little over $2,000 in the middle. Flop comes down king high, looks good for me, and sure enough, we end up winning versus pocket tens. In the next one, I raise it up with 7-6 of diamonds to $50. One caller behind me, and then the small blind makes it $300. I got a good hand to play in position, so I call. Middle position player folds. Heads up in position to a flop of Jack 6-2 with 2 hearts, 1 club. Middle pair, but nothing else aside from that. When he c-bets $300, I can't go anywhere just yet, having flopped a pair, so I toss in the money, and we go to a bad turn card. It's the Queen of Clubs. Should generally be better for him than for me, so when he bets $750, I decide to relinquish the pair of sixes and live to fight another hand. And that another hand is going to be this one. Action gets all the way to the small blind, who raises it up to $70, and I look down at King 9 of diamonds on his left in the big blind. I think this hand is better to raise with than to just call, so I make it $250. The straddler folds, and now the small blind thinks for a bit before raising again. He makes it $800 to go. I'll be the first to say King 9 suited against all this aggression is probably best to just let it go. But I decided to call in position because something about the way he raised so quickly and the sizing that he used made me feel like he didn't have a pair. So if he doesn't have a pair, maybe he's got like Ace King, Ace Queen suited. And if we both miss, maybe I could take it down being in position. Again, not advised, but that's what I decided to do. I call. We go to a flop of Jack 6-2. 1 heart, 2 spades. Absolutely nothing going on for me, but my opponent checks, so why not take a stab, right? That was kind of the plan pre-flop when I made the call. I put in $550, and he lets go of his cards right away. A little bit easier than I expected, but luckily this time it worked out after not playing very well pre-flop. In the next one, there's an early position limper before I raise it up to 70 with Ace 9 of diamonds. The button makes the call, as does the limper, so we go 3 ways to a flop of Ace King 6 with a diamond. Early position checks. I c-bet $70. The button calls behind me, and then the limper calls as well. So perhaps a little bit concerning here, having top pair with not a great kicker. Turn card is the Queen of Diamonds, though, giving me the nut flush draw. That means I've got even more cards that might improve my hand. But when it checks to me, I don't think continuing to bet makes a whole lot of sense. We've got showdown value, but not really a strong enough hand to continue getting value from 2 opponents. So I check it. So let's see what the button wants to do. And what he wants to do is check it behind. River card is the 3 of spades, changes absolutely nothing, I would assume. Early position now decides otherwise, though, and leads out for $210, right around half pot. On one hand, he probably isn't bluffing, given all the action that's gone down so far, but on the other, we're getting a good price, and I have top pair. There are some missed draws as well, like a missed heart draw or something, so I decide to call, which is also a little sketchy, given that the button is behind me. He could raise me out of the pot and turn his hand into a bluff. I don't know. But anyway, the button folds, so that's not a concern. Early position, who bet $210, says he doesn't have much, so I just turn it over and we win this one. Next, the button opens to $50. Small blind makes the call, and I am in the big blind with ace 10 unsuited. Could go either way here. I think more often than not, calling makes the most sense, but occasionally re-raising is also fine. And my thinking is the raise came from late position, rather the latest of positions. He's on the button, and then the small blind called. So both of these guys could have not very good hands. So I decide to take the aggressive route and try to pounce on that. I make it $300. The button makes the call. Small blind folds. So we go heads up to a flop, which is not bad. Queen, queen 10 with 2 diamonds. That gives us technically 2 pair. Not a bad flop, unless we're up against the queen, of course. So I decide to continue betting small, much like I would with all my hands. $200, and then the button raises to $600. Already not a very fun situation, because if he had any sort of decent holding, I would expect him to just call. So this re-raise indicates either a queen or better, or just a total bluff. Well, if he's got queen 10, obviously he might raise, but I have removal to that. And same thing goes for pocket 10s. So my biggest concern here is a hand like king queen suited, but still can't go anywhere just yet. We're still beating all sorts of bluffs and potential hands that might even be worse than mine and raise for value, like jack 10 suited or something. So I make the call, and we go to a turn card, which is the 8 of spades. I check it again, and now he bets $1,200. At this point, against the general player pool who play 5, 10, 20, I think just folding is totally fine. But in theory, I think folding would be ridiculous. We still have a really good bluff catcher and can't be folding ace 10 just yet. So really a tough spot, especially being out of position. I think folding is probably a little better, to be honest, but I decide to call in the moment. Not in love with it, but who knows? We might still win this one. River card is the 9 of spades. That's not great. Now any jack makes a straight as well. I should have mentioned as well that jack 9 suited completed on the turn. It's questionable how often he would raise that on the flop, but hey, it is something to think about. I check it for a second time, and this time my opponent checks it back. So perhaps we're winning this one, but nah, he's got ace queen of spades and goes for the slightly timid check back on the river. So I get punished for being a little too curious on the turn. Certainly didn't have to lose as many chips as I did, but life goes on, and it goes on to this hand. There's a small blind limp. I make it $80 in the big blind with king 5 of clubs. Straddler folds, and the small blind calls. Heads up to a flop of ace 7 4 with 1 club out there. We've got some backdoor potentials, as well as, board coverage or something like that. I raise pre-flop and there's an ace. That's what I'm trying to say. He checks, I bet $50, and now he check raises to $130. Pretty small check raise. And with all those aforementioned draws, plus the fact that we might occasionally have the best hand if he's check raising with a straight draw, I decide to make the call, and we go to an interesting turn card. It's the ace of clubs, giving me a flush draw, but also making it less likely my opponent's got an ace, since, there's 2 of them out there now. I think that's how math works. He checks it, and I decide to bet small, just like I would if I had something good. I bet $170. My mistake here is not realizing how much my opponent had behind, because he now check raises all in for $500, which is really not that much. At this point, I've got to call around $300 to win a pot that's over $1,100. Kind of a tricky spot with a flush draw here. We could be drawing dead if he's got a boat. At the same time, we could, less than 5% of the time, but at least some percentage, have the best hand still if he's got like 6-5 suited, for example. Not very likely, but who knows. So yeah, I think about it for a bit. It's probably a slightly losing call, break even at best, but eventually I do call, decide to gamble it up a little bit. We run it twice, and I make a flush on the second board. Makes no difference, though. He's got ace 7 offsuit and takes it down with the nuts. That's a full house. I can't beat it. Nice hand, sir. Let's move on to the next one, where there's a late position open to $50. Button makes the call, and I look down at pocket jacks in the small blind. That's way better than king 5 suited, so I raise it up to $300, and both of my opponents make the call, perhaps sensing a little bit of blood in the water. Flop comes down not good at all. It's 8-6-5 with 2 clubs. All sorts of hands that beat me on a board like this. So a pretty easy check with an overpair. That's what I do. And now late position bets $200 before the button makes the call. Not ideal whatsoever. A board like this is very sketchy for just one pair, despite the fact that it is an overpair, and being up against a bet and a call, it's already getting dicey, but I'm not going anywhere just yet. Getting a good price and could occasionally still have the best hand, so I make the call. Turn card is interesting. It's the 8 of clubs, so of course anyone with an 8 now beats me, but it's also less likely anyone's got an 8. I check it, late position checks it now after betting the flop. That seems like a good sign. The button does not check it though. He instead announces all in for $900. That's a little over half pot, so we're getting an okay price. The problem is that even if I call, there's a player left to act behind me who could certainly be laying in the weeds with a full house or a straight. So yeah, questionable as to whether or not we should call with jacks here, especially holding the jack of clubs seems even less good since, he can't have a jack high flush draw. A minor consideration, albeit not a huge one, but it is something that's on my mind. However, the way this player announced all in for 900 and the fact that he has been having a very rough night so far makes me think he could easily be doing this with a hand worse than jacks. So I don't waste too much time before calling. Thankfully, the button folds, so we're heads up against who I perceive to be a fun player that isn't necessarily playing super tight. He asked to run it twice. Again, that seems like a good sign. First river is a 7. The second is an ace. No flush on either board, and we end up winning versus queen 10 for a missed straight draw. Well, actually, now that I'm looking at it, I don't think he had much. So props to my man over here on the button trying to steal the pot. Unfortunately, I got jacks, and I end up winning this one. So that was the biggest win of the night. And that was the last interesting hand at the Encore, but plenty more poker coming up in this vlog. Stay tuned. Look who I found. The vlog father, the man himself, Mr. Demi.
Hi everyone.
We're in the privacy room, but I'm giving him no privacy. He's here to pick up some money and say hello to his favorite vlogger, which is me. And speaking of his favorite vlogger, I ended up losing a little over $200 across 5 hours. Kind of a depressing end to the day. Perhaps even worse than losing more than that. But alas, we still have tomorrow where I'll be playing either here or somewhere else that's interesting. For now, I'm gonna take care of some dinner since it's like past midnight and bothering this guy until he tells me to leave him alone. All right.
Never. You're never a bother. Never, ever.
So for anyone out there who hasn't tried Allegro at the Wynn, highly recommended. Anyway, it's like 2 in the morning and I'm exhausted, so I'll check in with you guys tomorrow. All right, it is 1 p.m. the following day. I got some sleep, I'm feeling better. So it's time to head back to the strip and play some more poker. Just one problem, there are no games available. Granted, that's kind of my fault because I'm probably the only guy trying to play post WSOP poker at 1 p.m. on a Monday. Not the best time to go looking for a game, but alas, it is what fits best on today's schedule. So we're gonna head to the strip and see what we can find. Probably 5-10 is the best I can hope for, but at the very least, we'll get into some game and get some more hands for this vlog. But yeah, that's enough chatter. Let's drive back to the strip. It's about 10 minutes away, so time to get back in that red Honda Civic with a straddle plate and see what today has in store for us. So I haven't really had the best luck at Aria the few times I've played here on the vlog. Probably because everyone here is better at poker than I am. Hey, even the bad players gotta win sometimes, right? Maybe today's my day. All right, we are back, this time playing some 5-10 at Aria. The straddle is on in this first hand. Early position opens to 50, and I am next to act with ace-10 offsuit. Not really strong enough to call from this position, so I think either re-raise or fold are the best options. This time, I re-raise. I make it $150. Gets back around to the $50 raiser, and he makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of ace-6 deuce with 2 spades. Interestingly enough, my opponent now leads out for $340. That is a pot-sized bet, my friends. What am I going to do, though? I've got top pair. I make the call. Turn card's interesting. It's the 6 of diamonds. Typically a card that should favor him a little more than me. Not too much, but considering that he led out on the flop, now it seems like this card is going to be a brick for both of us. So when he bets $150 now, which is really weird, after potting the flop, he now leads out for $150. I don't really know what to do, if I'm being honest. He's only got $600 behind, so I don't know. I just announce all in. Let's try to get all the chips in if he's got a flush draw or a worse ace. A little bit worried about, ace jack or ace queen maybe, but who cares? I announce all in for 600. He doesn't think too long before folding. Very odd hand to start the night, but it seems the game is on. In the next one, I raise it up from early position with queen jack of clubs. Beautiful hand. Make it $30 and only the big blind calls. So we go heads up to a flop of king 10-6 with a club. He checks. I bet $60. Electing to bet around pot. My opponent makes the call, and we go to a 10 of spades turn card. Really good for him, really bad for me. Seems he recognizes that because he now leads out small. $60. I've got a straight draw still, so I make the call. River card is the deuce of clubs. Complete brick, and I've got queen high. And now my opponent checks it over to me. Now, of course, we cannot win with queen high, but at the same time, I think this is one of the worst hands I could possibly bluff with. Meaning it's just not a very good selection of hand to try to take it down with. We have removal to potential bluffs that my opponent would have, and we have 0 removal to any king or 10. So I decided to just wave the white flag and check it back, and we end up losing versus king jack. And the next one, I put on the $20 straddle. Early position limps, and now the button makes it 80. I look down at pocket nines in the straddle. That's a good hand, so I make it 380. Early position folds, and now the button decides 380 is not enough and raises once more. $760. Pretty much a min raise, if I'm not mistaken. This is the kind of stuff you see when you play middling stakes in Las Vegas. I make the call, and we go heads up to a flop of queen 10-6 rainbow. I check. He bets small, $380. Can't go anywhere just yet having pocket nines on a board like this, although, of course, I'm already not loving the situation. I make the call, and we get the worst turn card in the deck. It's the jack of hearts. So now we're obviously losing to ace king, which was one of the few hands we were beating on this flop. I check it. He checks it back. River is the deuce of hearts. I check again. I'm not taking the bait, man. He jams 1,500, and I fold right away. In the next one, I open the button with jack 8 offsuit to $50. The small blind calls, and now the straddler makes it $250. Mind you, I haven't played a hand in like 2 hours at this point, so I feel like I've got a tight image, and I've seen the straddler put on a couple of squeezes already. So I decide to get completely out of line and raise it again myself. I make it $650 to go. Small blind folds, and the straddler calls. Now, before you guys go popping off in the comments, I know this is a terrible play, and this is something I rarely ever do. If I am going to get a little bit crazy, it's usually going to be with much better hands than jack 8 unsuited, but they say whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas or something like that. So, well, apparently not. Now it's on YouTube. But anyway, we go heads up to a flop of 10-6-4 rainbow. He checks. I bet $400, and he calls. Turn card is the 6 of clubs. Not a great card for me. He checks, and instead of checking back, I decide to announce that I am betting all of my orange chips, each one worth $10. As you guys can tell, I'm not taking this hand very seriously, but I slide in all my orange chips, which looks to be around $1,000 total. My opponent laughs and claims that he's going to fold because this bet that I've placed is just too inconvenient. Hey, I'll take it anytime. Next, the button opens to 50, and I make it 200 in the small blind with queen 10 offsuit. Not a very good hand, should probably fold like 90% of the time, but this is one of those 10%ers, so I make it 200 to go. He calls, and we go heads up to a flop, which instantly rewards my questionable pre-flop decisions. It's queen 10-4 with a flush draw. I've got top 2 pairs, so I'm going to put some chips in the pot. I make it 120. He makes the call, and we go to an interesting turn. It's the 9 of diamonds, completing some possible straight draws and also introducing some new 2-pair combinations like 10-9, but I mean, I've still got top two. I'm not going to be afraid of monsters under the bed. So I bet $580, and once again, my opponent calls. River is terrible. It's the king of hearts, so now any jack makes a straight. I decide to check it, and now my opponent does not check it. Instead, he jams all in for $1,755. That is nearly a pot-sized bet, and of course, we are in a world of hurt. Two pair has gone down in flames, it seems, since any jack obviously now beats me. But then again, I start looking at the board, and it seems tough for him to have a jack. I guess ace jack is possible, but aside from that, he would probably have to have a hand like queen jack or jack 10. And since I've got a queen and a 10, and there's a queen and a 10 on the board, I mean, there really aren't too many possibilities. I don't suspect he's got a hand like queen jack offsuit or 10 jack offsuit. So if we only account for the suited combinations of those hands, there's really not too many. And there are some potential misdraws, like any flush draw on the flop. Is it possible that perhaps he has a pair and a flush draw, like 4 or 5 of clubs or 9, 7 of clubs, and decides to turn his hand into a bluff? I don't know. It's certainly possible. Would he do that? Again, I don't know. I've never played with this guy before, but I can't just fold every single time I have 2 pair or a set and there's a possible straight out there. So it's a pretty close spot. I got to be right like a third of the time to make this a profitable spot. Am I going to be right a third of the time? I don't know. Let's find out. I toss in a call and he says, we're good. Just kidding, that didn't happen. He turns over jack 10 offsuit, which I was a little bit surprised to see. I would expect him to fold that before the flop against a re-raise, but I'm happy to see that my man is out here gambling, and his gambling has paid off as we lose a big pot to the man with a straight. Didn't have to get so stubborn. Could easily just fold the river, considering that people don't seem to bluff a whole lot in Vegas, especially on the river. What do I know? Apparently not much, because we lose this one, but perhaps there is hope on the horizon. Stay tuned for this interlude, and let me explain. All right, so good news and bad news. The bad news is that I'm stuck like $3,000 and the game essentially just broke. But the good news is that there is one player remaining who wishes to continue playing. So we're going to be jumping into some heads up action. I asked if we could change the game to a little bit bigger. So we're going to play 20-40 heads up. And he doesn't look like the type that wants to quit anytime soon. So I'm stuck 3,000 from today's 5-10 game. Stuck 200 from last night at the win. Let's see how this third installment of this vlog goes. Right, so we are now playing 20-40 no limit heads up. I don't play a whole lot of heads up poker, but the few times I have, I really do enjoy it. Here we go. My opponent opens the button to $100, and I look down at King 9 suited. Good hand to re-raise with, so I make it 400, and he makes the call. We go heads up to a flop of Queen 9-4 with 1 club, so we've got middle pair and some backdoor stuff. I decide to bet small, 260. My opponent makes the call. Turn card is the 3 of diamonds. We have middle pair, which isn't super strong, but still good enough to try to get to showdown with, so I check it. Now my opponent does not. He bets $580. We're still beating plenty of bluffs and perhaps even some worse hands that might bet for protection, like 9-8 suited, for example, among others. So I make the call, and we go to a river, which is the deuce of spades. Doesn't change a whole lot. I mean, 5-6 suited does get there, which is a minor consideration. Maybe like a 5-6 with a backdoor flush draw on the flop that decides to float. But aside from that, shouldn't really change anything. I check it once more. My opponent does not. Instead, he jams for $3,500, a huge bet compared to the size of the pot. And I could just have many better hands to call with than King 9 in this situation versus that size. So I decide to fold relatively quickly. And my opponent shows the King of Hearts, which is an interesting one. I suspect he had either King Queen or perhaps a slow played pocket kings that didn't re-raise before the flop. I don't really know. Maybe we just got bluffed by like King Jack suited or something. Either way, nice hand to him. In the next one, I raise it up with 5 deuce of clubs on the button. I make it 120. He makes it 500, and we've got a suited hand in position. Probably folding is fine since we have so many gaps in the hand. You know, 3-gapper, I think that's what this is called. But I decide to call and see what happens. Flop comes down Queen Jack 8 with 2 clubs. So we've got a flush draw. I'll be at 5 high. We are playing heads up, no limit. a flush draw is going to be pretty dang good. So when he bets $360, I think you could mix between raising and just calling. This board should generally favor me a little bit more, I think, but he's still going to have a bunch of strong hands. So I decided to just call, and we go to a mediocre turn card. It's the Queen of Spades. He checks, and of course, I've got 5 high. Starting to bluff now seems totally fine. And in fact, I think I should have bet small on this card, but I decided to check it back. Very questionable, honestly, looking back at this. But the river comes the 6 of clubs, so we get bailed out. Now my opponent bets $1,100. Kind of interesting that he is now betting when the flush gets there. But either way, I've got a flush, and we're playing heads up, and I think this is a pretty easy raise situation. For whatever reason, though, I don't raise. I just call, and we end up winning versus aces with a club. Not really sure if he would have called a re-raise with that hand. Maybe not. Maybe he would have. We'll never know because I decided to just call like a p***. So we're getting a little bit lucky despite not playing very well. Let's see if we can play a little better and keep that luck on our side. In this one, he opens the button to 100. I raise it up to 400 from the big blind with ace jack. He calls, and we go to a flop of 10 deuce deuce with 2 spades. I have 2 overs and the ace of spades. I bet small, 250. My opponent makes a call. Turn card's a brick. It's the 6 of diamonds. I guess it does bring in a backdoor flush draw, but shouldn't change much aside from that. So I decide to continue betting as if I had a 10 or better. I make it $1,000 to go. And now my opponent makes the call. So we're looking for some help on the river, which sort of comes. It's the 4 of spades. Of course, we don't have a flush, but my opponent can't have the nut flush because I have the ace of spades. And if he's just got a middling strength hand like a 10 or some sort of pocket pair below the 10, this is going to be a very tough spot for him. So I decided to target those sorts of holdings. I call this PP on the PP, which stands for put pressure on the pocket pair. Very advanced strategy. Tell your friends. I jammed $2,700 into the middle, and he thinks for a few seconds before folding. So that works. Can always count on PP on the PP. Anyway, that was the last interesting hand that I got on camera, but there were 2 more fun ones that I played, which I'll go over shortly, so stay tuned for that. As always, I hope you all enjoyed the hands. It is so beautiful out here. Every time I go to the Aria Valet area, it's pretty sweet. But anyway, time to recap what just happened in there. I try to vlog some of the heads up hands, but the play just goes so fast when it's only 2 players. The hands were just coming too fast and furiously for me to film every single one. So instead, I am just gonna tell you guys the last 2 that were significant, and they were pretty big for the size of the game that we were playing. So here we go. In the first one, I open the button with king queen. He re-raises from the big blind, obviously, and I decide to raise again. Good candidate to do this with, you know, balance out the times that I have good stuff. So I make it 1,200. He makes it 500. I make it 1,200, and he calls. The flop comes down ace high. It's like ace 9-5. He checks. I bet small, around 10% pot, and he calls. Yeah, I remember I bet 260 bucks or so. Turn card was a 4. He checks again, and now this is the point in the hand where we can just shut down or continue bluffing, but we have removal to ace king and ace queen, and it's one of the worst hands I'll have. So I decided to continue applying pressure. I bet $900, or maybe I bet 900, trying to set up around a pot-sized all-in on the river. My opponent makes the call one more time, so it's getting a little bit dicey. River is an offsuit 3, so yeah, we've got king high and a dream. He checks a 3rd time, and I decide to jam all in for around, I think it was like 2/3 the size of the pot. My opponent doesn't snap fold, but after a few seconds, he does let it go, claiming that he had 6-5 of clubs, which was, I believe, flopped bottom pair, turned some sort of draw, and then brick the river. So we got a fold from a pair, which is good, and managed to take this one down. Could have been a disaster if he called. In the next hand, what happened in this hand? Let me think about it. Oh yeah, he opens the button, and I re-raise with king 5 of clubs from the big blind. He thinks for a bit and calls. I think it went 100, I made it 400, and he called.
So flop comes down ace 4-4 with a club. I decide to bet small. I think I bet 250, and he makes the call. Turn card is another ace, so now it's double paired. It's ace, ace, 4-4. I decide to slow down and check it. With king high, we have some showdown value, but probably can't get called by worse again. Now he decides to bet. I think he put in $600 or so, maybe $650. You guys are gonna have to excuse the fact that these memories are all a blur at this point. But with king high, can't go anywhere just yet, I think. So I make the call. Oh, key point in the hand. How could I leave this out? The flop had a flush draw. There were 2 diamonds out there. So king high with no diamond, I think a pretty straightforward call. We go to a river, which is the 9 of hearts. I check it again, and now he bets $1,600. Kind of a tough spot, because even though we don't have a diamond and he could easily be bluffing, my hand is somewhat face up and he could very well have an ace. So I don't think it's necessarily the easiest of calls, but without a diamond and kind of having turned my hand a little bit face up, I'm a bit tempted to call. I feel like if he had some sort of middling pair that bet for value / protection on the turn, he probably would have checked back on this river. So I think this bet is either a full house or nothing, and it's kind of hard to make a full house, especially heads up. So I decide to call, and he says good call. So we take it down with king high. And after that hand, the momentum was definitely on my side, and luckily stayed on my side for the remainder of the session. After a few hours, I decided to call it quits. And yeah, so things went all right. In terms of results, I was stuck like 3,000 when the 5-10 game broke, but managed to get that back in the heads up portion and also won a bit. So in total here at Aria, I ended up winning around $2,600. So lost 3,000 in 5-10 and then won like 50, 600 at heads up 20, 40. It's been a long day. There's been a lot of poker played. My mind is a little fuzzy, so I think I'm gonna go get some food and call it a night. And I think that's it for this vlog. Tomorrow I'm gonna head back to LA. I'm playing on Hustler on Wednesday and Friday, so quite a bit of high stakes poker coming up. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. I know it was smaller stakes than I normally play, but you know, you guys say you like those, and let's be honest, who doesn't like Las Vegas anyway, right? So yeah, that's it. As always, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Let us know that you enjoy the videos. Joey's putting a lot of work into these, and they take a lot of time as well. So the bare minimum, a thumbs up would make him feel better. Do it for Joey. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. As always, thank you for watching. Thanks for the support, and until next time, good luck at your local tables. Peace.